Kendrick Adeyemi could buy almost anything, cars, houses, even whole companies, with just a signature. People called him Africa's brightest mind, the youngest billionaire to ever build an empire from scratch. Yet, lately, even from his tall glass office at ADX Holdings, the city below felt far away. Every evening, he would stand by the window and stare at the Lagos Lagoon. The water glimmered with city lights, buses crawled along the roads like tired beetles, and the noise from below rose up faintly through the glass. His phone kept buzzing with messages, people congratulating him for another big business deal, another award, another headline. But none of it made him smile anymore. Inside he felt empty. Success had given him everything except peace. That night, when everyone had gone home, Kendrick walked into the elevator alone. He took off his suit jacket and held his shoes in his hand as he rode down to the underground garage. The silence felt strange. For once, there were no assistants, no cameras, no flashing lights. Just him. At his car, he opened a hidden compartment under the floorboard. Inside was a small, old bundle he had packed himself. A faded kaftan, a cracked pair of sandals, and a torn cap. Things he had bought from Balagan Market without his bodyguards. He remembered walking through the noisy stalls that day, smelling roasted corn, hearing people shout prices, feeling normal for once. He changed into the clothes right there in the car. The rough fabric scratched his skin. He rubbed a bit of ash on his face so he wouldn't look so clean and shiny, and tied a dirty bandage over his wrist to cover the mark his expensive watch had left. When he stepped out into the night, the air felt different. Heavy, real, and full of life. Cars honked, street hawkers shouted, and the smell of fried plantain and petrol mixed together. It wasn't pretty, but it was honest. He told himself he was only doing this as a research project, a way to understand how poor people really lived. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. He wasn't studying anyone. He was searching for something, maybe a reason to feel alive again. Under a flyover bridge, he found a group of men lying on pieces of cardboard, their belongings stuffed in plastic bags. No one cared who he was or where he came from. They just shifted and made space for him without asking questions. Kendrick lay down beside them. The concrete was cold and hard, the smell of smoke in the air. Yet for the first time in months, he felt calm. He looked up at the night sky, where only a few faint stars fought through the city lights. And for the first time in a very long while, the billionaire everyone admired finally closed his eyes and slept. Not as Kendrick Adeyemi, but as a man who had vanished. Morning rain tapped softly on the tin roofs above the bridge, sounding like fingers playing a quiet drum. Kendrick woke up slowly, the cold from the concrete crawling into his bones. Around him, people were already stirring, some wrapping up their blankets, others stretching and yawning. The air smelled of fried akara and onions drifting from a nearby food stall. Across the wet street, he saw her. A slim young woman was battling an orange umbrella that kept flipping inside out with every gust of wind. She laughed under her breath, even as the rain soaked her shoulders. There was a small wooden table in front of her with a hand-painted sign that read, Zara's tea, 200 Nigerian nairas. Curious, Kendrick pulled his old kaftan tighter and crossed the road, his sandals splashing through puddles. He joined the small group of people huddled around her stall. When it was his turn, she looked up. Her eyes were tired but kind, the kind of eyes that had seen hardship but refused to give up. "Good morning, sir. Tea?" she asked, her voice bright despite the gloomy weather. "Yes, please," Kendrick said, trying to sound like the others. His voice came out rough and low, almost strange to his own ears. Zara poured steaming tea from a dented kettle into a clean plastic cup. She added 2 slices of bread and slid them across to him. "You're shivering," she said, glancing at his soaked kaftan. "Sit there. That stool isn't wobbly." "Thank you," he murmured, surprised by her gentle tone. She smiled, brushing rain from her face. "Business is slow today," he said, taking a sip of the hot tea. Zara shrugged, tightening the knot of her scarf. "Rain is both blessing and wahala," she replied. "But I choose blessing. At least people will want something warm." Kendrick couldn't help smiling. She spoke with a mix of strength and faith that tugged at something deep inside him, something he had forgotten he once admired in people. Just then, a man in a crisp white shirt pushed through the line. "Quick! Quick! I'm late!" he barked, throwing some coins that clattered on the wet table. The coins rolled off and fell into the mud. Zara didn't snap or scold. She bent quietly, picked up the coins, and placed them neatly on the tray. "Thank you, Olga," she said, still smiling. "But next time, the line is your friend." The man grumbled and walked off. When the morning rush faded, Zara packed up the used cups and wiped the table dry. She noticed Kendrick still sitting there, sipping the last of his tea. She reached into her basket and handed him a small nylon bag. "Here," she said. He opened it. It was a hot meat pie, fresh from the fire, still steaming. "For lunch," she said, waving off his protest. "Don't argue. If God feeds the birds, he won't be angry if I help him feed a person." Kendrick blinked, feeling something tighten in his chest. "How much?" he asked softly. "Today? Nothing," she said with a teasing smile. "But tomorrow, you'll pay me by returning the stool to the wall before the rain comes again." He nodded, warmth spreading through him despite the drizzle. For the first time in a long while, he looked forward to tomorrow. Days turned into weeks, and soon Kendrick became part of the street under the flyover. A quiet shadow that people hardly noticed anymore. He learned the rhythm of life there, the unspoken rules that kept everyone going. He learned who counted their coins twice before buying food, who would steal your slippers if you closed your eyes for too long, and who would share their last sachet of water when fever struck. Life under the bridge was rough, but it was real. Nobody cared about titles or designer suits. Everyone was equal in struggle. Kendrick carried crates for a fruit seller in the mornings. In the afternoons, he helped a Danfo conductor control passengers when the shouting got too loud. He smiled when children called him Uncle Bandage, because of the cloth he always wrapped around his wrist. They thought it was from an old wound. They didn't know it was to hide the mark of his luxury watch. Every morning, no matter how tired he was, Kendrick joined the line at Zara's tea. Her orange umbrella had become a small sunrise in the grayness of the street. Zara had a memory like no other. She knew everyone's name and story. The electricians who worked night shifts, the cleaners who slept in shops after closing time, the woman who braided hair and hummed gospel songs from dawn till dusk. She remembered who liked their tea extra sweet, who wanted less milk, and who could only afford half a cup. One morning, a teenage boy ran up to Zara's stall and tried to snatch her cash box. The people around shouted, but Zara didn't panic. She simply stepped back, her palms open. "If you're hungry, tell me," she said in a calm but firm voice. "If you're angry, tell the river. This one," she pointed at the box, "is my rent." The boy froze, surprised. Nobody had ever spoken to him that way, without fear or insults. After a long pause, he turned and ran off, leaving the box behind. The crowd clapped. Someone said, "Zara, you get strong mind oh." She only smiled, wiped her hands on her wrapper, and continued pouring tea as if nothing happened. Kendrick watched all of it with quiet admiration. There was something about Zara's calm strength that humbled him. She didn't have much, yet she carried herself like someone rich in peace. One afternoon, Kendrick noticed her stall was empty. She didn't show up until late in the evening, and when she did, her eyes were swollen from crying. She still smiled, still served tea, but her hands trembled slightly as she poured. Kendrick didn't ask questions. But later, he heard from the fruit seller that Zara's mother had been rushed to the hospital. Her blood pressure had spiked, and the doctors refused to treat her until a deposit was paid. That night, Kendrick couldn't sleep. He knew what it felt like to be helpless, when money couldn't fix the ache inside. Except in this case, money could help. He had plenty just hidden away, but he couldn't reveal who he was, not yet. The next morning, he slipped a small nylon pouch under one of Zara's tables, filled with the exact amount the nurse had asked for. Then, pretending to have found something, he called out, "Madam Zara, look what someone dropped." Everyone turned as he lifted the pouch. Zara took it carefully, suspicion in her eyes. "Whose own?" she asked. I don't know, Kendrick said. But it was right under your table. She opened it slowly and gasped when she saw the money inside. The crowd murmured, amazed. Zara blinked, then looked at him. You're honest, she said softly. God bless whoever lost it. Kendrick only nodded, his chest tightening. She didn't suspect a thing. That night, as the streetlight flickered above him, Kendrick stared at the ceiling of the bridge and realized something strange. He had come here to test the kindness of others, to see how people treated the poor. But now, it was his heart being tested, by the warmth of tea, the patience of rain, and a girl with an orange umbrella who believed in small, good things. And for the first time in his life, the test truly mattered. Kendrick lived two lives now, and every day it pulled him in different directions like ocean tides. By day, he was Kendrick Adeyemi, the sharp, confident CEO in designer suits, surrounded by glass walls, shining tables, and people who spoke in numbers and deadlines. By dawn, before the city truly woke up, he was Kunnel the Drifter, a quiet man in worn clothes, smelling of kerosene and rain, sleeping under a noisy flyover. The two worlds couldn't be more different, yet somehow he belonged to both. One Tuesday morning, in a room filled with the scent of coffee and air conditioning, Kendrick sat at the head of the ADX Holdings conference table. His chief operating officer, Adana, stood at the other end. She was a smart woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She dropped a pile of contracts in front of him. Your disappearances are becoming poetic, she said dryly. Poetry doesn't close refinery deals. Kendrick gave a tired grin, trying to play it off. Let's call it a thinking sabbatical. I'm just scouting the terrain. Adana folded her arms. Then stop scouting and bring back maps, she said firmly. Her tone softened after a pause. Kendrick, whatever it is you're chasing out there, be kind with it. Not everything can be solved by escaping. Her words hit deeper than she knew, because escaping was exactly what he'd been doing. That night, after all the meetings and handshakes were done, Kendrick slipped out of his mansion in plain clothes, driving himself to the same old flyover. The smell of rain and fried plantain filled the air as usual. He found Zara sitting behind her wooden table, counting coins under the weak glow of a lantern. The light made her face shine like polished amber, and for a moment, Kendrick forgot the noise around them. You're still awake, he said, walking closer. She looked up and smiled. You too, sir. Couldn't sleep? He shook his head. Something like that. Zara sighed softly. I'm saving up for a kiosk, she said after a while, almost whispering. Something small with a roof that doesn't laugh at the wind. Maybe even a radio. She smiled shyly, realizing she had said too much. Kendrick's eyes softened. You'll do it, he said. You're the kind of person roofs respect. She laughed, covering her mouth. Roof respect? I've never heard that before. It's true, he said, smiling back. Some people chase shelter. Others become it. You're the second type. Her laughter faded into a gentle silence, the kind that felt comfortable, not empty. Then thunder rumbled across the sky, warning of another storm. Rain's coming, she said, standing up quickly. Together they grabbed the table and dragged it closer to the wall. Her orange umbrella flipped inside out again, and she groaned. Let me help, Kendrick said, holding one side as she straightened the metal ribs. Their hands brushed for a second. He felt the roughness of her palms, proof of long days and hard work. Good night, sir, Zara said softly, tilting the umbrella over both of them for a moment. The rain began to fall, tapping on the umbrella like music. Don't forget stool duty tomorrow, Kendrick chuckled. Yes, ma'am. As she packed her things and disappeared into the curtain of rain, he stayed there, watching until her orange umbrella became a small in the darkness. When he turned back to the sleeping spots under the bridge, a voice called out, Oga Kunnel! It was Tund, the rail-thin man who preached to anyone who would listen. He grinned, eyes twinkling. You look at that tea-girl like she's the last bus of the night. Better run before it leaves you behind. Kendrick laughed quietly, shaking his head. Maybe I don't mind waiting. The preacher raised a brow. The man who owns time is now waiting. Wonders never end. Kendrick didn't answer. He just sat down, letting the rain soak his sleeves. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the rush of meetings or deadlines. Under that bridge, with the sound of rain and laughter around him, he was in no hurry. The city of Lagos never ran out of stories, and it especially loved the wrong ones. One evening, a gossip blogger posted a blurry picture online. It showed a man who looked a lot like Kendrick Adeyemi, ADX Holdings' powerful, mysterious CEO, shopping in a local supermarket. No bodyguards, no designer suit, just a plain shirt, a quiet smile, and his hand resting gently on a baby's trolley. Within minutes, the photo spread across the internet. People argued in the comments. That can't be him. Billionaires don't shop at supermarkets. Look at the jawline. It's definitely him. Maybe he's broke now. Maybe he's finally human. By morning, Kendrick's phone was vibrating nonstop. Adana's voice came through the line, tight and serious. "We have auditors in from London, Kendrick. I need you physically. No excuses this time." He sighed. "I'll be there." And he was. His body sat in the boardroom, his face calm and confident, but his mind, his heart, was still under the flyover with Zara. The meeting stretched on for hours. Men in suits spoke about refineries, profits, and export plans. They threw numbers around like dice. Kendrick stared at the slides, but what he saw wasn't a graph. It was Zara, handing a steaming cup of tea to a cleaner who had come up 10 naira short. She had smiled and said, "Next time, pay when the sun smiles again." No report or contract could match that kind of grace. After the meeting, Adana caught him by the door. "You look like you're somewhere else," she said. He smiled faintly. "Maybe I am." That night, Kendrick sent her a short message. "By a kiosk near the flyover. Cash. No ADX logos. Put it in the name Zara Okafor. Call it Orange Umbrella." Adana replied almost immediately with a single emoji, an arched eyebrow, and then texted back, "On it." The next morning, for the first time in weeks, Kendrick overslept. He woke up in his penthouse, surrounded by silence and the steady hum of an air conditioner. Felt strange, cold, too clean. He jumped up, grabbed his old clothes, and drove straight to the flyover. The closer he got, the faster his heart pounded. When he arrived, his chest tightened. Zara's table was gone. Her orange umbrella too. The spot where she always stood was now taken by another woman selling boiled corn. His stomach sank. "Where's Zara?" he asked the fruit seller nearby. "She no come today," the woman replied, shrugging. "Maybe rain worry her." But then, out of the corner of his eye, Kendrick saw something bright. A splash of orange shining across the road. There she was. Zara stood beneath a small but beautiful kiosk made of shiny corrugated metal, painted in a cheerful tangerine color. The words Orange Umbrella danced proudly on a new wooden sign. A small crowd had gathered, clapping and cheering. Zara was laughing and wiping her eyes at the same time. "Who did this?" she kept asking, looking around in disbelief. "Some angel investor," a man from the crowd said, grinning. "Said you've been paying rent to the sky for too long." Zara pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "God is too kind," she whispered. Kendrick stayed back, hidden among the bystanders, his heart pounding in his chest. The joy he felt was so strong it almost hurt. When Zara finally noticed him at the edge of the crowd, her face lit up like sunrise. "We did stool duty, sir," she called, laughing. "Now come and drink tea as a shareholder." The crowd laughed, and so did he. He walked closer, pretending to be just another customer. "Congratulations, Zara," he said softly, placing a 50 naira coin on the counter like it was a lucky charm. She smiled, her eyes shining. "Thank you. You've always brought good luck, sir." Kendrick wanted to tell her everything right there, that he was the reason for the kiosk, that he wasn't who she thought, that the man she served tea every morning owned skyscrapers and ships. But his courage failed him. So instead, he just smiled and said, "Keep building, Zara. The world needs more roofs that don't laugh at the wind." The coin on her counter caught the sunlight and gleamed. His heart, however, trembled in the shadows. Secrets don't stay hidden forever, especially not in Lagos. The city had a way of peeling back layers, exposing what people tried to bury. And on that gray, humid morning, Kendrick Adeyemi's double life finally began to unravel. It started with a question inside ADX Holdings. The head of security, a tall, serious man named Mr. Bello, had been tracking strange patterns in the CEO's schedule. Every few days, Kendrick's driver dropped him off at odd locations before dawn and picked him up from different spots hours later. No security detail, no business reason. Just gaps. Bello didn't like gaps, so he followed the trail himself. His car rolled under the bridge near Marina, where the air smelled of kerosene, roasted corn, and damp cardboard. The place was alive with chatter. Hawkers calling out, buses honking, gospel music playing from a tiny speaker. Bello stepped out, adjusting his polished shoes and straightening his tie. He looked painfully out of place, like a business magazine dropped into a busy market. His sharp eyes scanned the crowd, and then landed on a small tea stand painted a cheerful tangerine color. Orange umbrella. He watched the woman behind the counter move like sunlight in human form. She poured hot tea, balanced change with a smile, and somehow made everyone around her feel seen. People laughed near her stall in a way they didn't laugh anywhere else. Bello frowned. Strange, he muttered. The boss was always missing around this location. He walked up to Zara, flashing his security ID so fast it looked like a threat. "Good morning, miss," he said stiffly. "Have you seen this man?" He turned his phone around. On the screen was Kendrick's corporate photo, the one used in magazines. Sharp suit, clean shave, and that distant, practiced expression that said, "I have everything, but none of it touches me." Zara took one look at the photo. For a second, her breath hitched. She looked up at the man in line, the quiet one who always ordered tea with 2 slices of bread, who always chose the same shiny coin, who once helped her fix her umbrella. His face was dusted with ash, his clothes rough, but beneath all that, the jawline, the calm eyes, the soft voice. Couldn't be, could it? Her lips curved into a quick laugh to hide her confusion. "No, Oga," she said lightly, shaking her head. "Only faces I know are the ones who buy bread." Bello didn't smile. "You're sure?" "Very sure," she said, forcing cheerfulness. But the security chief didn't believe her. He motioned for his men, who started asking questions loudly, too loudly. "Who owns this kiosk? Who pays the rent here?" Their voices sliced through the morning like sirens. People gathered, curious and tense. Markets could smell trouble like rain. Zara's hands shook as she gripped the edge of the counter. The laughter around the stall began to fade. Then, from behind the crowd, Kendrick stepped forward. His old sandals slapped against the wet ground. "Oga," he said quietly, "leave the girl. I'm the one you're looking for." Bello turned. "Excuse me? She has nothing to do with this," Kendrick said, his voice firmer now. "She's aiding concealment," Bello replied coldly, folding his arms. Kendrick's tone dropped, calm but powerful. "I said leave her." For a heartbeat, the entire bridge fell silent. Even the buses paused their horns. The air changed. Bello stared at the beggar standing before him. The way he held his shoulders, the authority in his voice, the unmistakable calm of someone used to command. Then it hit him. Recognition dawned like lightning. His eyes widened slightly, and he bowed his head, a gesture of respect that looked almost like apology. "Sir," he said softly. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. Zara's eyes met Kendrick's. The truth lined up all at once. The kindness, the quiet generosity, the day the kiosk appeared. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Finally, she whispered, "You." It wasn't a question. It wasn't anger either. Just the quiet sound of truth finally finding its voice. Kendrick lowered his eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this." The crowd began to murmur. Phones lifted, whispers spreading like wind. The secret was out. The billionaire had been living under a bridge. And though the world was about to explode with questions, All Kendrick saw was the hurt and wonder in Zara's face. And he knew this was a moment that would change everything. Kendrick didn't call for a press conference. He didn't rush to release a public statement or craft some smart excuse for the headlines that now screamed, "Billionaire CEO lived under Lagos Bridge disguised as beggar." Instead, he went straight back to where everything began, the orange umbrella kiosk. In his hands were two things: a small bouquet of flowers and the heavy weight of guilt pressing down on his heart. When he reached her stall, Zara was already there, serving tea to a few customers who whispered quietly as he approached. News had traveled fast. People knew now who he really was, but they were too stunned to say much. Zara looked up when she saw him, her face unreadable. "I am sorry," he said immediately, his voice breaking the silence before she could even open her mouth. "I told myself it was research, that I wanted to understand the city my company claims to serve. But then I met you, and everything changed. Yet I still hid. I was afraid that if you saw my real world, you would treat me like a skyline. Something distant. Something untouchable." Zara stood still behind her counter, as if the wooden plank between them was a shield. The kettle hissed softly, filling the quiet. "You let me trust you," she said finally, her voice gentle but sharp. "You let me worry when it rained. You let me pray for you because I thought you were a man with nothing. But all this time you had everything." Kendrick lowered his eyes. "You're right," he said softly. "And I don't expect forgiveness. Not now. I just want the chance to tell you the whole story. Not in an office, not in front of cameras, but right here with your tea between us. Not my money. Just me." For a long moment Zara said nothing. Then she poured tea into a plastic cup, the steam rising between them like a curtain. "Then talk," she said quietly. He took a deep breath. He told her about his life before the bridge, about the endless meetings, the boardroom arguments, and the hollow victories. How every success only made the emptiness grow deeper. How people praised him for being brilliant but never really saw him. He told her how one night he had simply broken. How he had packed a few old clothes and decided to disappear. To see what life felt like without power, without money, without being Mr. Adeyemi. He spoke about her. The day she smiled at him beneath that broken orange umbrella. The day she gave him free bread and told him that rain could still be a blessing. How that simple kindness had shaken him more than any business award ever could. Then he told her about the kiosk. How he had asked his COO to buy it secretly in her name. "I didn't do it to make you owe me," he said. "I just wanted you to have something stable. I wanted to help without taking away your pride." Zara listened quietly, her hands clasped in front of her. A single tear slipped down her cheek, shining in the sunlight, but she didn't wipe it away. When he finished, she exhaled slowly. "Lagos teaches you to hold your bag tightly," she said softly. "But I also learned to hold my heart tightly too. You picked the lock with kindness and with lies, both at the same time. That's complicated." Kendrick nodded. "I can live with complicated," he said gently. "But I won't live with falsehood anymore." Zara's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good," she said, "because if you ever lie to me again, I will serve only cold tea to your soul." For the first time in weeks, Kendrick's mouth remembered how to smile too. "Understood," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, then poured another cup and slid it toward him. "Drink," she said. "Warm tea helps when hearts are healing." And as the rain began to fall softly on the roof of the orange umbrella, neither of them moved away. The city of Lagos loved drama more than rain. And now it had found a new headline. "Billionaire pretends to be beggar to study the poor." Bloggers had a field day. Some called Kendrick Adeyemi a hero who wanted to understand real life. Others called him a fraud who used people's struggles for an experiment. Every social media post had an opinion, and the truth, like smoke, refused to stay in anyone's hand. At ADEX Holdings, Adana handled the media storm with her usual sharp calm. She released statements, smiled through interviews, and shut down the worst rumors. But inside the boardroom, the tension was thick enough to cut. "This stunt risks shareholder confidence," one director said stiffly, adjusting his glasses. A CEO pretending to be homeless? It's embarrassing. Another added, we expect leadership, not performance art. Kendrick listened quietly. He didn't argue. When the meeting ended, he packed his briefcase and left the tower of glass behind. Instead of fighting words with words, he decided to speak through actions. The next week, he returned to the same bridge, but not alone this time. He came with a small group of engineers, city health officers, and sanitation workers. No cameras, no reporters, just people ready to work. He funded proper drainage under the bridge so that when the rainy season came, the people sleeping there wouldn't wake up in pools of dirty water. He installed solar-powered streetlights so women like Zara could close their stalls safely after dark. He opened a small health kiosk nearby, just a single room, but stocked with blood pressure medicine, insulin, and malaria drugs. He had seen those needs with his own eyes. He also hired Tund, the skinny man with a preacher's voice, to help organize the residents. Together they formed a small tenants' council, giving everyone a voice in how the place was managed. Each member received a small monthly salary, nothing fancy, but enough to stand with dignity. Every envelope had a name, not a label. Zara watched all of this from her kiosk, her orange roof glowing under the new lights. People told her she should accept a role as his public image, maybe appear in his next corporate video. She refused. I make tea, she said firmly, not speeches. I will not be your halo, but I will be your neighbor. Kendrick only smiled. That's better than any halo. One evening, after the workers had packed up and the bridge had grown quiet, Zara found him sitting on the curb, his jacket tossed aside, his tie loose, his shoes off. The billionaire looked like a tired boy who had finally stopped pretending. He didn't look up when she sat beside him. My father left when I was 8, he said suddenly. The day I bought my first company. I told myself he'd see me on TV and come back. He laughed softly, a sound without joy. He never did. Zara listened, the night breeze lifting her scarf. I was 18 when I realized my mother's smile was a wall, she said. Every morning she built it so we wouldn't see how hard life was. We love people who can't love us the way we want, Kendrick. But we still find a way to love the world. He turned to her, eyes tired but gentle. You always make things sound simple. They're not simple, she said. They're just real. For a long moment, they sat in silence, watching a Danfo bus rattle past and listening to the faint hum of the city. Then Kendrick spoke, his voice quiet. Zara, will you let me court you? Honestly this time. No disguises. No secrets. Just me. Zara looked at him. His loosened tie, his bare feet touching the ground like he finally belonged somewhere. She smiled. Yes, she said. But our first date is right here under this bridge. And you're washing the cups. He laughed. A sound full of warmth this time. Stood up, rolled his sleeves and obeyed. As the night deepened, the city buzzed on. But under the orange umbrella, with soap bubbles, laughter, and the sound of running water, something gentle and true was finally being built. Something money could never buy. Months passed, and what Kendrick and Zara built together didn't ask either of them to disappear. It wasn't about a billionaire rescuing a tea seller or a girl trying to fit into a world of boardrooms. It was simply two people learning to meet in the middle, between luxury and survival, between pride and love. Their mornings began with steaming cups of tea at the orange umbrella, shared laughter, and quiet plans before Kendrick's driver whisked him away to his office. By evening, they took long walks along the lagoon, where money wasn't the language. They spoke instead of dreams, silly jokes, and Lego sunsets that glowed like molten gold. Of course, they still argued sometimes. Zara had a stubborn streak that could rival thunder, and Kendrick had the patience of a ticking clock. But even their fights ended differently. There were no silent treatments, no gifts to cover guilt. They always ended with truth instead of receipts, apologies instead of pride. Kendrick met her mother properly this time, with flowers in hand and humility in his voice. The older woman sized him up with motherly suspicion before finally saying, "If you hurt my daughter, I will pray you into confusion." Kendrick laughed and promised, Then I'll make sure I never give you a reason to start. Zara, in turn, met Adana, his brilliant COO. She teased her right away. You must terrify half the men in your office, Zara said, grinning. Adana raised an eyebrow. Only the ones who deserve it, she replied. Together, they attended the tenants' council meeting under the bridge. Kendrick sat among market women, bus conductors, and shoe shiners, no suits, no titles. He asked questions instead of giving speeches, listening more than he talked. People began to trust him not as a savior, but as one of them. Then came one special Saturday. Kendrick invited Zara to a construction site behind the market. The place was quiet except for the soft hum of tools and the smell of new cement. What are you up to? She asked, following him through the open gates. He led her to the center, where a graceful, low building curved like a cupped hand. Inside, there were shelves, a small reading corner filled with books, 2 classrooms with working fans, a tiny stage for performances, and a row of micro-shops with low rent for small traders. The floor of the courtyard was painted in a warm, glowing orange, the exact color of her umbrella. Zara stared, speechless. Kendrick, what is this place? It's called the Door, he said. It's not charity. It's a chance. A door. People choose whether they want to walk through it or not. She knelt slightly and touched the painted floor. You're learning to build things without building altars to yourself, she said softly. He smiled a little. I'm trying. I fail daily, but I'm trying. Zara turned to him, her eyes bright and steady. Then try with me. For a lifetime. He blinked, caught off guard. Was that? A proposal, she said, grinning mischievously. Don't faint. Some of us don't have time for men who take 10 chapters to ask simple questions. Kendrick burst out laughing, shaking his head in disbelief. You're unbelievable, he said. Then, suddenly serious, he knelt down anyway. Not with a flashy diamond the size of guilt, but a simple ring made of warm gold. Zara Okafor, he said, his voice low and trembling. Will you marry me and keep me honest? Zara looked at him, her heart so full it almost hurt. Yes, she breathed. The crowd of workers nearby realized what was happening. They began clapping and cheering, some whistling, others shouting, God bless the couple! The sound echoed across the courtyard like music. Under the open sky, surrounded by the city that had once broken and remade them both, they stood hand in hand. 2 people who had learned that sometimes the bridge between worlds could become a door. Their wedding wasn't grand or loud. It didn't happen in a cathedral or 5-star hotel. Instead, it took place in the garden behind the door, the community center they had built together. The same bridge that once sheltered pain now overlooked a celebration of second chances. Children from the neighborhood had painted paper umbrellas in orange, yellow, and white, and they were strung along the aisle like tiny lanterns. The air smelled of rain and flowers. The sound of laughter floated across the courtyard. Tund, the once homeless preacher, stood proudly at the front, wearing a clean shirt and his widest grin. He officiated the ceremony with warmth and humor, quoting a verse about how the poor are not decoration for the rich, but family to be honored. The crowd clapped and shouted, Amen. Even though it wasn't that kind of church, Adana sat in the front row, wearing sunglasses that failed to hide her tears. Allergies, she said when someone teased her. But everyone knew better. Even the ADX board members who attended couldn't stop smiling. They sent a gift later, a fountain for the door courtyard, with a note that read, Every good bridge deserves water. It was their quiet way of saying we approve. From that day on, Kendrick kept one promise most fiercely. He no longer disappeared. He no longer needed to run from the world to feel real. When life felt heavy, he didn't escape into disguises. He simply put on slippers and walked with Zara to the orange umbrella kiosk. There, he would pay full price for his tea and wash cups alongside her. No one clapped or took photos, and that was exactly how he liked it. When the storms rolled through Lagos, bringing thunder and flooded streets, the couple didn't hide inside their mansion. They closed the kiosk early and helped their neighbors lift their goods onto dry blocks. Tomorrow, business will return, Zara would say, squeezing his hand. Today, We protect what matters. At ADX, things changed too. Kendrick brought his experience from the bridge into his leadership. He set up new policies, funding for community businesses, free medical clinics in worker districts, and fair wages for contract staff. Some board members called him too emotional. He just smiled. If emotions build roads, I'll take that risk, he said. Whenever meetings became too long or tense, Zara appeared at the office with her signature smile and a metal flask. She would walk straight into the boardroom, pour him tea and say, "For whatever you're pretending is not fear." The directors laughed, but they also noticed how their once distant CEO had become more human, and somehow more effective. Months later, during an interview with a journalist, Kendrick was asked what lesson he had learned from his unusual journey. He leaned back and said quietly, "Wealth is not an apology. Poverty is not a prop. Love is not a stunt. If you want to serve a city, you must first learn to stand in the rain without a roof that belongs to someone else. And if you're lucky enough to have a roof, open a door." That night, he and Zara sat on their balcony, watching the lagoon shimmer under moonlight. The city below glowed with 1,000 restless lights. Zara rested her head on his shoulder. "You know," she murmured, "you're still that man from under the bridge." He smiled and kissed her hair. "Yes," he said softly. "Only now, I finally know my real name." Far below, the city continued its endless hum. Buses honking, vendors shouting, radios singing. Somewhere under another flyover, a kettle whistled. Somewhere, another girl with an orange umbrella poured tea for a stranger and called him sir in a way that saw the human before the title. In a world full of disguises, two people had chosen to live with truth. And in the heart of the city that once divided them, love, steady, humble, and unashamed, had built something stronger than wealth. It had built a bridge with a door.